First time I went and did medicine, right? And sat there, my first day was like one of the worst experiences I think I've ever had. But it's always said it's not a good trip or bad trip, it's just a trip. Spirituality and capitalism belong together. Those thoughts, those feelings, that comes from something bigger than I am. And together I believe we can all grow. That's how we're going to change the world. That's how we're going to change the planet. All right. Well, thank you so much. Today I'm sitting here with Nate Bailey. Now, this man is the 100-mile man. This man will take you and teach you how to be a better leader. He will show you what's not working and really help an individual find really the leader within. And I think that is an amazing journey that you've been on since I've known you. But thank you so much for coming out here today, and I appreciate you making the journey.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I know we've been talking about this. You've been talking about the podcast really since we first met in Mitch Miller's group, like a couple of years ago.
Absolutely.
3-4 years ago now. And that concept started to grow and evolve. And then obviously we had the opportunity to go through Rhythmia last year and our ayahuasca journey, or my first journey with ayahuasca. And here we are finally making it happen.
I know,
so
man.
Excited to be here.
Isn't that fascinating though? Like, when we look at journeys, right? So I've been talking about this for a while. And it's like you think sometimes when you're going to start a business or you're going to do something or a training or whatever that you're like, snap your fingers and all of a sudden it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
But little by little and piece by piece. Now there's people that can go and they just take an idea and they run with it extremely fast. Some people a little bit, they think things through a little bit more, and others, they take a lot more time. And I would say with this, I at one point in time did have a small podcast, and it was called Addicted to Freedom. And the whole concept was if you're going to be addicted to something, you should be addicted to your freedoms. Yeah. But I found for me that was a really emotional journey, talking about addiction all the time, talking about other people's addictions, talking about that whole process. Yeah, right. And it just wasn't feeding my fire. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to pivot. And that's when I pivoted into a spiritual capitalist. And took the time to build the studio, worked with the right team to put this thing together. But here we are, man.
Yeah.
And
this is incredible, by the way. I love this.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm jealous. I've had a podcast for 4 years and little podcast studio envy right now.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing. Let's talk about this, which I love that we're talking about this. And that's the fact is that you had an idea and a concept, and you just start exactly where you're at. And I think I heard one time biblically, this gentleman was talking in a sermon, and I love watching sermons because I get something out of it. Not to say that I'm like that's my religious vibe or spiritual vibe, but what I love is just listening to the lessons behind it. And what he's talked about is how do you fill a bucket of water, right? And that's just one drop at a time. And so you start exactly where you're at. There's a gentleman in the Bible. His name is Shamgar, and Shamgar was basically this warrior. And he was over the Philistines, right? And I believe the Philistines were coming to, I believe, murder this guy. And he had only an ox gourd, which was his bone. And so they're coming to murder him. They're coming to kill his family. They're coming to rape his wife. And he destroys, like something like, I don't know exact number, but we'll call it 1,200. Yeah. But he destroys 1,200 men with an ox gourd, which an ox gourd, I believe, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, is the bone of an ox.
Okay.
So he destroys all these people because he just starts where he was at. And so you start exactly where you're at. You didn't do all this fanciness here. Yeah. How many podcasts have you done so far? Because you're like, you've done this. You've written a book. You've done a lot of things, man.
Yeah, well, it's always kind of been, like you said, I've just had the idea and I just go and do it, which I think there's a lot to that, right? I think that's good, but I think there's definitely some value in maybe slowing down a little bit and taking your time a little bit. Like I have another book that I want to write, and that's probably been, in the past it was I have another book and then I just kind of do it, force it. Maybe the quality isn't as great as I've wanted, but to come back and answer your question, I did one podcast back in 2016, same thing. I'm just going to do a daily podcast. I did about 130 episodes. And then I did another one called The Integrity Bank that was 100. And I was like, 100 seems like a good amount of episodes, right? Because it's kind of a daily motivational mindset, personal growth, like you listen to that, I don't know how much more you need, right? And then, now we have Championship Leadership Podcast, which is an interview style just like this. And that's been about 4.5 years now. We're coming up on 400 episodes.
Man.
Yeah.
You know what I love about you is that whenever you make your mind up. So the thing is, a lot of people don't realize like how difficult it is to run a podcast. They think, oh, it's just simple. You're just going to sit down, you're going to talk. And you know, and I know that there's a lot more to it. You got a team behind the background.
Absolutely.
You've got show notes. You've got editing. You've got the right guests that need to come on, and having a little bit of, I would say that you have to know something about them or have some history with them. And what I like about you, or I actually admire about you, is that when you put your mindset to something, like you don't just kind of do it. You do it, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. For most people, they can do 10, 15, 20 recordings, no big deal.
Right.
But then when you start to get up into that 30, 40, 50, 100, and you're continuing to do it on the days you don't want to do it, it's no longer fun. It's something now that you've committed to, and so you're going to keep your commitment. That to me is amazing. That is an amazing quality that you have. How do you cultivate that?
Yeah, that's interesting. It reminds me of a story, actually, because this was back in 2016, 17. I was working with a coach because I was going to do this event called Go Ruck Selection, very intense event, 48 hours straight through. And it's typical for them to have 90 people start and only one person finish, right? So very intense. And one of the tests that you had to do was a 5-mile run in under 40 minutes, which is a 7.5 minute or 8-minute mile, pace. And, I'm a bigger guy, so it's going to take me a little bit to get there. So I hired this coach, went and did this event, and then got it in my head I wanted to run 100 miles. And so I signed up for the race. And I shoot this off to my coach, and, I'm excited, right? Hey, just sign up for this. Want to do this. Would you be willing to help me out? And it was great, the response he gave me. And the response wasn't necessarily like great, but it was, what he really thought that I needed to hear, not necessarily what I hoped to hear. Which
That's
was,
a true
hey,
friend right there.
Yeah, he was like, I love your enthusiasm. I love your motivation. Like, I love your spirit even. But he's like, I don't think that you have what it takes to run 100 miles. And he's like, you have to, and he just said all the things that you just said. You have to show up when you don't want to. You have to show up when your body hurts. You have to show up when it's cold outside. You have to show up. Like, you just have, in order to run 100 miles, there's certain things that you have to do. No amount of will is going to get you through if you don't have a certain level of capacity, right? And so that's basically what he's saying. And, again, I was 6'3", and 200 maybe 45 pounds at the time, and not built like a 100-mile runner. And so I appreciated his honesty in that, but I was also like, well, I'll show you, right? Like, I'm going to go do this thing. And I did. I failed the first 2 times I did it. But on this third attempt, I did the Pony Express here, actually just outside of Salt Lake City where we're at. I did the Pony Express about 7.5 months after I signed up for the first one and was successful. But again, it's just by simply doing all those things that he was like, I don't know if you're really, because running 100 miles is not a small task, and it requires a really, really high level. And it can't just be a cool thought or idea in your head. I think that's what a lot of people get excited about, the thought and the idea of something. And then when it comes to the reality of actually doing what's required to go and being successful, right, with everything that we have else going on in our life, maybe not working and building that mindset muscle, because it's a muscle, right? It, like, to become a person that will just do what they need to do to not quit, right? I failed twice. And, to continue to be like, hey, I'm just going to keep going, whether it takes me three times or 100 times. I'm committed to running 100 miles, so I'm going to go do it. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do what I need to. I'm going to surround myself by the people that are going to help me to get there that maybe have been there before. And so I think it's all of those things, right? It's, the reason that you're in my life and in my circle, and Sean, and, we talked about Chris and all the people that we know and that I found myself surrounded by, is because they're all willing to do those same things as well. And we're all kind of on a similar purpose and mission. We're all unique and different, but
Yeah, we're all
yeah,
we're all
very
wired. We
unique
are
and different.
all wired a very
Yeah.
different way. I think you're not going to see me out there running 100
Right,
miles,
right,
right? I have
yeah.
zero interest in that.
Yeah.
But it amazes me to watch you. Now, here's something that I'm curious about. So, you've ran how many times you've ran 100 miles?
I've covered that distance 6 times now. Yeah.
600 miles.
Yeah.
Not to mention all the training you
right.
do in between. You've covered a lot of land
Yeah.
with those
Oh, yeah.
feet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what was more difficult for you, running 100 miles or drinking ayahuasca for a week?
Oh. They're just really very different. They're both incredibly hard. I would say I think I did say while I was at Rhythmia that I would rather run 100 miles than the experience I had night one.
Yeah.
Because that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. So,
And yet, you continued to go on.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Although I didn't know how I could go on, and I wasn't sure I would be able to, but I think that does go back to everything that you go through in life that's challenging, that's difficult, right? There's a lot of similarities in those, and there's things that you can take from the 100-mile race or running experience to my experience in Rhythmia that helps me to persevere and to get through those difficult times. And if I didn't have the mindset, I know I said this at Rhythmia, because it felt like, without going into detail and really sharing, because it's very personal, but
Of course.
it totally did feel kind of like my life was over and I didn't know how I was going to go back home and continue. And I felt like I was just crushed after that first night. Went through till about 4:30 a.m. I was the very last person in the Maloka, and like barely being able to stumble home and not being able to sleep and just my mind racing, and then to get up and like drag myself to yoga, and then to just spend the time in the cafe basically just around other people. And you saw, the state I was kind of in that day, right?
Did.
And then it's like, we got to do this again at 5 p.m. And there was something that just happened, and it kind of went back to, again, just that mindset that I built through time of showing up and doing what's required, of, just shifting my perspective to like, well, my life doesn't have to be over. Even if this is true, I still get to decide how I show up.
I can relate with you on this.
Yeah.
And the reason I can relate with you so much is the first time I went and did medicine, right? I sat there. My first day was like one of the worst experiences I think I've ever had. But it's always said it's not a good trip or bad trip, it's just a trip. And so I've had really what people would consider bad, and I've had things that people consider good. And the one thing I find fascinating about it, though, is how often in life we feel like we can manipulate things, or I feel like I can manipulate things to my own outcome, and not realizing it's step by step. It takes time. It's going to take energy. But every time I'm like, okay, I had this really great experience. And apparently when I walked in, I used my left foot and I laid in this area in the room and I did this. So I'm going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
It ain't that way.
Yeah.
Every single night is a different experience. Every single thing is different. And so for people at home, they're listening and they're like, we talk a lot about plant-based medicines and we talk a lot about ayahuasca because it's really my plant. It's really been something that's taught me a lot of lessons. But every single time that I believe that people take this or go through ceremony and they go through this ritual, it's always different. So what Nate is saying over here is not always what you're going to experience. Someone could go and have the most beautiful time. They could go to sleep. They could do all kinds of things. But really what I wanted to do, which was important to me and for you as a viewer listening at home, is I wanted you to be aware of that sometimes the things that we think are the most difficult are also the most freeing. I mean, you ran 600 miles just alone in the races that you do. You were in the military for a long period of time, and thank you. Obviously, I'm so grateful for your service. And you've started businesses, and you've had success and failures, and you've had multiple podcasts. But the thing that I love about you so much, as I was saying before, is that you just keep going. You just keep going. You said something a couple days ago I heard, and I want to expand on this a little bit. It was something to the fact I saw on social media, and it said that it's not about like for kids, it's about doing their best, but not for men.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Explain to me a little bit what that means to you.
Yeah. To do our best isn't like at a certain point, it's just not good enough, right? Like, and that's, I think, where that comes from. Doing your best is for kids, right? Like to do your best. But at a certain point in life, like, yes, what you have right now is all you got, right? Like where you're at is where you're at. So give everything that you have in this moment, but don't settle for that. As an adult, when you got people relying on you, whether it's a business, whether it's clients, family, whatever it is, whatever area of life, being an example for others, people are watching you, looking up to you, just doing your best. If your best isn't enough to get you to the end point or to get you to the goal or the outcome, isn't going to be good enough. And so, you're going to have to give your best today, find out where that measures up, and then now you're going to have to get better, and you're going to have to continue to grow and improve and learn from whatever you learn today, or take whatever you learn from the past to help you to move into the future, right? To get that end goal by staying here, of course, right where we're at, and continuing to move and grow and shift and like course correct. That's what life is all about, which I think also comes back to your idea of like, we have this great idea of what ayahuasca is going to be like. I kind of thought it was going to be fun and cool, and everything I had heard from people was it was an amazing experience. It's life changing, and I didn't hear all the other stuff, or you didn't hear the actual real physical and mental hard work that it was that you had to go through to get to that. But I mean, isn't that life, right? Like
it's the reward though.
Yeah.
Like the reward is going through it now. And I also don't think that things have to be difficult. They don't have to be hard. Like life doesn't have to be that way. I think it's a lot of what we program. But one of the things when I heard you say that, it's for children to do their best. What it made me think of is that we strive, because that's always what it's going to be, but strive for excellence. And what we once thought was excellent, let's say it was maybe at one point in time, it could have been running, 20 miles or 5 miles or
absolutely.
a mile for you. Now it's 100 miles, right? And so the more that we get out of that comfort zone and we continue to push just a little bit more and push a little bit more, all of a sudden we find that we're so much more than what we once thought we were. And that's beautiful to me.
I just had a conversation this morning with a friend, and it was about that. It was about running. And like, I remember a friend of mine, he ran when I was in the Army and I was going through officer candidate school to become an officer. He was going through the class with me and he was training for a marathon. And at the time I was like, oh my gosh, a marathon. That's so impressive. That's so amazing. My mind couldn't wrap around my head of actually going out and running a marathon at that time. This is 2001 time frame, 2001. And he did it a couple of years in a row, and I was just like, "That's amazing! Now, someday I'm going to do that, right?" And then I do it, and then it opens your mind to the possibilities of, well, what else could I do? And then I'm like, I don't know, can I run 100 miles? And again, kind of like ayahuasca, I didn't do a lot of background research or study that was going to scare me or keep me away from that experience. Instead, I was just going to jump into it and figure it out as I went, which I think there is a lot to be said about that because there are a lot of people that want to overthink things and do too much research, and then they put too much stock into the wrong people that tried it or didn't try it or half tried it, that said, screw that that's don't do that, right? Because they couldn't do it themselves. And so you start listening for guidance and wisdom from the wrong people that are going to hold you back. And so I just, the power of just kind of jumping into it and figuring it out on your own. Once you're able to do a marathon, now 100 miles is 4 marathons, right? And it's like, well, what else can you do? And like the microcosm of how that just really spills into our life, and you can apply that to all these different areas. If I was so closed off and stayed in that closed off state where a marathon's just crazy, I could never do that. I wouldn't be here talking about having ran 6 100-milers.
There's no way you'd be here. You said something just a second ago. It made me think. We often want to find information, we want to find data, and we want to find the secrets. The 5 hacks for whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
That usually fit our narrative.
Yeah.
Not that doesn't fit our narrative, but that fits our narrative. You know, I often see when I'm sure you've done this before, you'll talk to people and they'll say, well, Nate, this is how it is, and this is what it is. And by the way, I found an expert that showcases and said, this is exactly what it is. When you were at that point in time, when you were thinking, geez, this is going to be a difficult thing, like a marathon, what gets you to the point to think that 100 miles is even capable? Because when I look at people like yourself, when I look at people like David Goggins, often what I hear in my head, these are some fucking masochistic people. Like they just like pain.
Yeah. No, I don't. That's not it at all for me, at least. Can't speak for David, but I'm addicted to the growth that I get through the pain, right? I'm addicted to the person that it forces me to become because I'm willing to seek it and see how I can come out stronger from it. I don't look forward to running 100 miles. I don't look forward to the pain of going through because I know at this point, I know the pain that I'm walking into because I've done it, right? The blisters, the feet hurting, the fatigue and the tiredness, the hallucinating because you're so tired and fatigued, the sun and the heat or the rain or whatever the conditions are going to be, like all of that isn't something that I'm necessarily excited. But I am excited about the growth of continuing to get better, to continue to be an example for my children, for my clients, and for those like wanting to never ask anyone to do anything that I'm not willing to do, like 10x.
Yeah, you're a fire
myself.
Walker. You walk the fire to show people it's safe.
Yeah.
I say this constantly. One of the things about you and about most of the people that I love, that I put myself around constantly, that inspire me, is they're willing to do the things that most people aren't willing to do. They're willing to do the difficult things. And often they smile while doing it and they become something in this process, which people look at and they go, wow, they're incredible. Oh, they inspire me. I can't believe like they do these things, right? And they take such a level of mastery. Like you're master your craft. So you said it's who you're becoming. So when you look down this path, who are you becoming? Next 5 years, who is Nate Bailey becoming?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know, really. I don't know, I think, again, if I tried, I don't want to put myself in a box, right? Because I have a feeling I could be something much, because then I'm limiting myself to who I'm becoming. Who do I want to be? I absolutely want to be an example for others, right? I want to be someone that inspires others to be better inside of their own lives, right? And not because I'm anything special, but I want to lead a life because I think that's what a great leader is. A championship leader is someone that inspires others to get more out of themselves than they would if they were on their own, right? And so if I can do that through how I live and through how I lead, then, and I can continue to do that at maybe a little bit bigger scale and continue to make a larger impact. It all comes back to really making an impact for as many people as possible. I want to continue to be that person. So whatever road that leads me down, it might not be 100 milers anymore after a certain amount of time. And, maybe I'm not ready to commit yet to coming back to ayahuasca, but at some point maybe that will happen, right?
Let's go to the end of the month.
I just stay
come with me. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have more to talk about then. One of the diving a little bit into spirituality, right? Because I know you've got your business, and your business is you take people that are looking for that edge, whether it be, and we'll get in the spirituality side of it in a second, but whether it be people that are, entrepreneurs, or whether it be even women that are taking care of their children at home, or even, a man taking care of their children at home, whoever it might be that's doing that, or it could be C-level executives, or, really just anybody is what I'm trying to state here. You have a training and a protocol that you take people through where you basically are showing them what they're capable of. You get them to a point in time. Some of these are 24 hours, 48 hours experiences where you're really breaking these people down, but you're showing them how strong they really are. Yeah. What do you think inside of a human being when they're going through these trainings that they've done something they've never done before? What do you think inside them snaps that continues to push them forward? Is it the fact of, I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to quit to show that I'm that I can't do this. Or do you think it's something like what inside of them snaps that just keeps pushing? Because you've seen it now many times.
Yeah, absolutely. With our Unleash the Leader experience, I mean, we just finished up class 10. So, I mean, the first one was back
Congratulations.
in November of 2020. Thank you. And, you know, as you were talking about that, my mind brought me back to the conversation of the marathon, right?
Yeah.
And what clicks, right? I think people are really just maybe one click away, right? And so I think Unleash the Leader helps them to find out what that click is and to be able to turn it so that they can then go forward with a ton of momentum and just really take it to the next level in whatever area of life they're looking for. But it's opening to their eyes that like, man, they're like sitting here, I could never run a marathon. And then they come through Unleash the Leader in that example, and they're like, I could do 100 miles. What am I talking about? Of course I could. And so what we do is, you know, bring individuals in. We bring them and we show them how to come together as a team quickly. We you know, really open them up in the first day to 2 days to expose them to, you know, some of the things that they've just settled with and allowed to, you know, just take on this way of being that isn't necessarily the highest level that they could be achieving and performing at, to be that example for others. And so we break them down, we break them open, and then we build them back up, you know, really over a quick period of time while getting them to come together as individuals to become a team like really fast. And then through that, now they're open and ready to like receive the real work, to really dig deep into themselves, to be able to have the ability to share their soul with others so that they can really get what they need to get to find that click, if you will. And not just in one area, right? We talk about spirituality inside of our faith and whatever that looks for us, you know, family, finance, and fitness, all the main areas of life, and really getting clarity, right? Clarity is power. And so to really be clear on what they want, the direction they want to go, right? And how are they going to do that? And how are they going to execute on that? And how are they going to create the plan and the roadmap so that they can go out and be that person with a ton of intention, right? Coming back to ayahuasca, like everything we talked about was intention.
Always intention.
And
Everything
I was
leads
like,
to
man,
intention.
this is so amazing because I've talked about being intentional, and I'm like, yeah, what intention are you bringing into everything that you do? What was the intention that I had coming in here today? You know, I'm sure you have an intention and a vision. And so we're like, what is their intention inside of their life? What's the vision? You know, who do they want to go out and be? What are the impact that they want to make? And we do that in 4 days. Like, it's an incredible process to see. You know, just at class 10, we had Rico Perez. He came through a year ago. And on the day that we started, he was finishing a half Ironman. Well, if you looked at his pictures 12 months before, there's no way this guy's doing a half Ironman. You look at him and you'd be like, he's doing the hot dog eating contest. Rico, if you listen, I love you, brother. But he would laugh. Rico. Yeah, but he would agree, right? Like, I mean, but he got the clarity. He created this intention for his life that next year, and he's a completely different man. And literally like 45, 48 pounds, I think he said, lighter. On the day that we started ULW here just a few weeks ago, he completed a half Ironman, which is just amazing. And that's a testament to himself, incredible. And I suppose to Unleash the Leader and what it brought out in him.
Yeah, it's what I love about trainings like this. I mean, I've done men's trainings.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of different trainings over my time on this earth, right? And I get to meet people just like you. That's how we met, right? Is trying to better ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
And shout out to Mitch Miller for that, because he, you know, he's a copyright guy. He's such a wonderful human being, brilliant at what he talks about, and really like how to own your own brand and a bunch of things. But that's how we met. And then we met again in Mexico, right? Like when we were over with the event with Chris's event with Lighthouse Financial. So one of the things that I think about when I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm like, man, it's the same thing. Leaders lead from the front.
Yeah.
Leaders go do the hard thing.
Yeah.
Leaders walk the fire, literally.
Yeah.
Leaders find the coaches and they continue to find those coaches. Even in your own spirituality, we talked about this a little bit. You found a coach, a gentleman that has mentored you and worked with you. Tell me a little bit about him.
Yeah, to this day, Jimmy Dowds, love that man. He's just an incredible human. And he's a pastor in Scotland, and got introduced to him through a friend and a brother that came through my program as well, and just a big part of my life as well. But he introduced me to Jimmy Dowds, 70-year-old man from Scotland. So obviously he's got the Scottish accent, which is amazing, just full of life, like more energy than I personally have at 48. And but he's been on a journey with me to really help me in that side of life, inside of my faith and my spirituality over the last really 2-3 years now. And I think it's super important to have those types of people in your life to really be on that path with. Like, it'd be way too lonely if we didn't.
We're not supposed to be on that path alone, man.
Yeah, exactly.
But isn't that brilliant though? Because if we look from the past, people think, meditation, plant-based medicines, different holy books, different teachers, different pastors, none of them can work together. They all have to be completely separate. If not, it's like some bastardized things and you're the downfall or the devil or something like that, and or breath work.
Right.
And all of a sudden you start to combine these modalities together, and we start to find out we are more connected than what we ever have been before. And these things actually work together. So how do you utilize those techniques, utilize spirituality in your day-to-day basis with your business? Because really we're talking about spirituality and capitalism. Yes, right now we're talking about leadership because that is what you know, that is what you teach, that is what you have studied and really put your whole life force into so you can help other people. But how do you combine these two?
Yeah, well, a ton of meditation, prayer, setting intentions, and conversations with God or with the voice, and also the breath work has been something that the first time I was introduced to breath work was Rhythmia, and it feels like everyone's talking about breath work now. I don't know.
You're also aware of it too, though.
I'm totally
right?
aware of it and how powerful that is and has been for me. I know we did some breath work when you came in back in April to lead that with our group, and a powerful experience with some journaling right after that, which I had an incredible experience with that. Just crazy, incredible experience with that. Just being like, I don't know, you're opening a door right to a new frequency level.
Yeah, well, it's like, are we opening up? So it's
accessing it for sure. So I think it's always there available to you, and I think that's what it does. It really gets you in tune with, and serves you so that you can serve others at a higher level. And when you're disconnected from that, like, it really does make a difference, right? And when you're connected to it, it really does make an incredible difference. And so it's why it's so important to me to continue on that journey, that path, and to share that with others. We had, Jeremy Newsom, he came in and led the breath work this time around.
Nice.
At the last ULA.
I'm sure it was a whole different vibe.
Yeah, it was. But
I love Jeremy.
It was, but
he's incredible.
It wasn't. It wasn't right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jeremy's incredible. He's got a fantastic book about money. He does a lot of stuff with trading. Yeah. I talked to him about possibly coming out here, and I mean, because really he spiritual capitalist. I mean, he lives and breathes it, right? Like, he's the guy that grounds himself all the time, and and I think spirituality is an interesting thing too, because we think, oh, well, spirituality, then that must mean that you have to, wear mala beads and you must have to like ground your feet and you have to do all these different things and whatever. But I think it's more than that. I think it's what you just said, and that is that you can still listen to that divine. You can listen to that space that's within, and the stuff that I was teaching there that day with those men was simply, we're going to go through breath work. After that, now we're going to teach you how to use journaling to connect to your inner power, God, Buddha, whatever, Muhammad, whatever you want to call that voice, the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit. I mean, there's many names, intuition, to be able to get your truth. And I think the truth, we often think the truth has one path, like it only leads to this thing. But I don't think there's one path. I think there's multiple paths, and it's whatever works for that person to find their peace, to find really, that voice, as you would say, inside of them that connects them to the understanding is we're all one. Yeah. Because when we're all one, we take care of everybody. Yeah. I mean,
it's interesting. I don't know. People get weird just when you say the word, right? Spiritual, right? Like, people are like, oh, like, what? Defenses go up, walls go up, and it's like, relax. Like, Don't make it weird. Like,
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
be weird about it. Like, be open. Maybe, try it on, see what, find out what that is for you. What is it? It's a little bit different for everybody for sure, but maybe that would, maybe it would really serve you at a high level, which I know it would.
I've been toying with the word God a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like, because this is all just exploration to me. It's
Yeah.
exploration to meeting wonderful people. It's exploration to learning what people's spiritual beliefs are. It's exploration to see like how they're running and working throughout their day, and like what connects us versus what divides us. Because that's so much of what's going on is what divides us. No. Like what connects us.
Yeah.
But the word like God, I think, has been, if you use the word God and then use the word universe, then use all these different words.
Yeah.
It all feels like it's the same thing.
Yeah,
That we're just
totally.
like afraid to say the word
For
God,
sure, right.
including myself, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't know if it's God or not.
Yeah.
Because God to me at a younger age meant this man in the sky that was like, you're wrong, you're right, this is good, this is bad. So I heard someone recently talk about how, I can't think of the gentleman's name, but he was talking at a conference recently, and he was saying that, when he was a kid, he stole a candy bar, right? And when he stole the candy bar, what ended up happening is that all of a sudden he goes home, mom and dad finds out about it. Well, now mom's mad at him.
Yeah.
And then dad's mad at him. And then guess who else is mad at him? God. And I'm like, whoa. And so all of a sudden he created this belief system that he's responsible for everybody else's feelings.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, it's interesting how we create these belief systems around God or around spirituality that says who.
Yeah. That's a heavy weight to put on a kid too, right? That's one that'll definitely ruin or definitely impact their life. To put that on a young person, like,
absolutely,
just did something, that God doesn't approve of.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot here for people at home, and grab your piece of paper and a pencil, take some notes here. Tell me, what is the top 5 characteristics that if you're going to lead and lead from the front, what are those top 5 things?
Well, I usually have 7.
Well, let's take out those 7.
Yeah.
Let's take the 5
I'll,
that you think are the most important.
Yeah. When I talk about leadership, again, I call it championship leadership. That's the name of my podcast. But 7 key characteristics. But I would say number 1 is create. Talk about creating yourself at a certain way to be able to show up, creating experiences for others, like not what you say or what you do, but how you make people feel as a leader.
That's
obviously
a big one.
Yeah. And creating relationships, right? Like leadership's all about relationships. Obviously, commitment. I love to talk about the story of Dashrath Manji, who, when you talk about commitment, people talk about doing what's required, not quitting, being all in, which sounds cool. And then I would hear people say, like, commitment is moving a mountain with a shovel if that's what's required. I'm like, that sounds awesome, but who's moving a mountain with a shovel? Well, Dashrath Manji moved a mountain with a shovel. So dig into his story. You could Google him. Incredible. So that's truly what commitment is, right? What do we got? Create. We got commit.
All right, give us all 7. Go for it. I know you want to.
Yeah, consistency. Being consistent, right? Showing up on a daily basis, which, I talk about the integrity bank and making deposits into your life by being your word. Continue to do that and make the gap wider between the day you had to make withdrawal and the day that, and the next time you have to. Building that balance up by being consistent, being congruent, right? Congruent in who you are as a leader. Do you tell everyone that you have an open door policy, and then when the first time they actually come to you with an issue or with a concern or with something, because you said you had an open door, you lay into them, or you obviously very, very clearly don't have an open door policy. You're now incongruent in who you are as a leader, and now they're never going to come back to you again in that manner because of that, right? And so, being congruent, completing, you say you're going to do something, going back to the 100-mile mindset, right? I failed a couple of times. Does that mean I'm going to quit and I'm going to throw in the towel? No, I'm going to find a different way to get there to be successful. And once we complete, obviously you got to celebrate. I think it's very important to celebrate along the way with those that help you to get there, right? Recognizing that you didn't just get everyone there, like as a leader, as a championship leader. You know, there's a high responsibility and ownership when things don't go right. And then, you know, when things do go right, there's plenty of praise to go around for those. And it's important to celebrate so that you're not constantly pushing and running and never taking the time to appreciate all the hard work that's been done and the accomplishment and the growth that you made along the way. So when we celebrate, now we can reset and we can continue to go. So I think that's 5 for you right there.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Those are all fantastic. The one you said that I often don't think about, but again, and I think it just struck me. I've heard you say these before, but it's how we make people feel.
Yeah.
Because then that's relationships and how we make people feel. In the end, it's all we got. Like we had a lady on here a couple weeks ago. Her name's Kathy, and she's not the most, you know, financially wealthy individual, right? But she's very wealthy.
Yeah.
She's got incredible
absolutely.
relationships. The whole city of Salt Lake seems to know her. She takes care of the homeless.
Yeah.
You walk in there and you feel like home every time. And I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, what's more important? Is it more important to have the impact to be able to, you know, to create all the finances you need to be able to do those things? Is it more important to be an incredible leader, or is it more important to actually cultivate society and cultivate your culture and cultivate all these different things within your own community to be able to build those relationships? Because one of the gentlemen I was with, he goes, I don't think she'll ever be this big, you know, tycoon of anything. And I said, no, but she's one of the most wealthy women I know.
Yeah.
And she is.
Absolutely.
And what you said is it's about how you make people feel. That's so important. And
I mean, we can all think of at least 1 to 2 people in our lives that just you really admire and look up to, that were, if you asked, you know, were to ask who are some of the greatest leaders that you've known, it's those people that just made you feel a certain way. It's not necessarily, you don't really, you can't necessarily quote them or, you know, some wisdom that they gave you that like changed your life, but it was just who they were and how their way of being and how you felt around them that makes you just remember them and look up to them and inspire to be them. Yeah, so that's a huge one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Such there's so many great mentors around that often are not the people that write the books.
Yeah.
They're not, you know, if I look at my mom's an amazing, caring, deep woman that she may not have had the books. She may not have done some, I mean, she was a civilian in the military, but she did a lot of good that way. But I don't think about her for a job. I don't think about her for the things she has done or her accomplishments or any of those things. I just think about the woman she is and the way she makes people feel and the way that she shows up in the world and the way that people say, oh man, I just love your mom. You know what I mean? Like people just see that. And so to me, I'm like, wow, that's one wealthy woman.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's, I love that.
Yeah.
So when you're done with all the trainings, you've done all the things and now it's the time that you're going to be leaving this earth and just graduating onto this next level. I'm always curious on how to ask this question, but to me, like, what is it you want to be remembered for?
I think it comes back to exactly what we've just been talking about, right? Like, I really hope that people will be able to, you know, sit together in a room or whatever if they're celebrating, you know, my life and just talk about, just the person that I was and how I made other people feel. And you know, that's a lasting impact. And that will, I think, when someone makes you feel a certain way, you now want to be that same person for other people. And so I guess you talk about legacy. You know, I'm not super worried about like leaving a legacy. I'm more concerned with living, you know, my legacy and how I'm impacting people in the moment along the way and hopefully making them feel a certain way that, you know, would have them speak highly of me, not just necessarily in front of me, but, you know, to others when I'm nowhere near or not even around any longer, right? I think that's impact, and that can spread far and wide.
Talk about living in the now, like living in the now of living legacy. People have to living legacy in a whole different way. I've heard that terminology many times, but to live your legacy now, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So I appreciate first and foremost you inspiring me. I appreciate watching your journey and for allowing me to come and to coach and train and work with these young men and be able to show up that way. For you creating this container for that, and for you taking the time to come out here and speak your truth and to speak your wisdom and to share with our audience just who you are and what you're about. And there's many other things that we didn't have enough time to talk about, some of the stories we've shared and the things you've told me over the years I'm just grateful for that. And I'm grateful for our friendship. So if people want to find out more about you, they want to say, okay, listen, I want to go do this training. I want to go to, Unleash the Leader, and I want to find out more about your books. What's the best way that they can find you?
Yeah, the absolute best way is my website, so natebailey.org. Go there and you can find me on social media, or, from there you can contact me, all the programs, books, things like that, podcasts. It's all there in one spot.
Awesome. I think the big takeaway I got today is a true leader is all about making sure that they're making their people feel good, that they're making sure their people know that they know as a leader what their people want, that they're there to show up for them. And that's what leading from the front's about. It's about showing up for those people and continuing to show up for them. And as we were talking about before, showing up even when you don't want to show up.
Yeah, right.
So,
100%. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. And go check out Nate Bailey. He's got some good stuff. He's got great books out there. And take the time to go and look at his training. It will push you. It will push you to a point in time, though, that will teach you how to be a better leader, not just for your people in your company or in the job that you're doing, but for yourself, for your community, and for your family. And if anything, who better to do it for? So thank you again.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Love you, brother.
Love you too.